My name is Mal Levy. Some of you may know me from life. Some of you may know me because I've been pretty active on social media more recently because of the Dahvie Vanity criminal investigation. I've been doing interviews with Hansen, Repzilla, etc., etc. And I've been getting contacted by a lot of survivors who want to share their stories and help their stories be heard, as well as report their experiences. So I kind of wanted to introduce myself in a different light. Something that I've noticed quite a bit is there's a lot of victim shaming on the internet, and not only for this case, but for many. And obviously, I don't have to tell you why that's awful and why I don't like it and that it hurts people's feelings, but that is the reality. So I kind of wanted to get into some stuff. A lot of the time when you watch these interviews with survivors, victims, whatever you want to call it, you get the story of what happened in this specific case, but you don't really learn too much backstory about the person affected. I think it's kind of important for me to share, and hopefully by me sharing my uncomfortable past, you'll kind of understand why things went the way that they did for me. And I'm not saying that other people should do that as well. In fact, I don't want them to feel that they have to, which is why I'm doing this. So maybe if you see this video, you'll understand that we are people and we have history, we have past, and we have traumas and experiences that lead us into certain directions. This video, I'm going to try my best to keep this a straight shot, not really edit too much into it. I want this to be very raw. So here we go. A lot of people will ask me, and other people as well, why didn't you report him if you witnessed X, Y, and Z happen? Why did you look the other way? You watched Dahvie receive oral from an underage girl. You watched him do this with an underage girl, but you didn't call the police, you didn't report it. Well, first I'd like to give you the simple answer as to why, and then I'll backtrack a little bit. I can't speak for everybody in this situation. I can't speak for former bandmates. I can't speak for people who toured with him, but I can speak for myself. So, some of you may know, I was a target of Dahvie's when I was underage. I was about 15 years old. This was over a decade ago in Orlando, Florida. We met through MySpace. We were both MySpace people, and I thought that we were friends. And I really liked this guy's personality. He seemed like a really fun, cool guy. He gives off that kind of energy, which, a lot of fans see on the internet, and I understand why they might see him not knowing about all the situations, all of the allegations, and think this is a really cool guy. So we would talk all the time on the phone, etc., etc. I finally went down to Orlando, and if you want to see my full stories, you can watch my Chris Hansen video, you can watch my Repzilla video, you can watch whatever, and you'll hear more story from that. But long story short, I ended up having a sexual encounter with him that I wasn't exactly wanting. I didn't realize that it was essentially rape until many years later. I didn't want to accept that that had happened to me. So, a couple of years ago, about a year ago I'd say, a year and a half, I'm not sure, Huffington Post released an article where 21 women came forward with stories about their experience with Dahvie, molesting them, raping them, drugging them, whatever it was, there were stories there. And it was being sent to me all over the place because people knew that I was his friend at one point. I had toured with him when I was 17 years old. And at the time I was in therapy, and I told my therapist, and she encouraged me to come forward, but I was afraid. I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know that a reporter had reached out to me until more recently, actually. And then, fast forward a year later, Chris Hansen is going to cover the case, and I'm being, once again, tagged in articles about that. So I see the first video that Chris did with Damien, and I realize I have to come forward, I have to say something. So Chris and I get in contact, and it's been now a week, and it's been nonstop. Sorry, I'm a little nervous to talk about this stuff. So when I was 17 years old, I was in Los Angeles, where I was back and forth at the time because I was already done with school. I graduated when I was 16, and I was going to move to LA by the time I was 17, or 18 rather. So I was in town, and Dahvie had a show, so I called him. I was like, hey, what's up? I hadn't seen him in a while, and he said, come to the show. He asks me to go on tour with him. So I go on the tour, and I witnessed a couple of different counts of, I guess you could say, statutory abuse. I'm not really sure what the right terminology is for it right now, but I witnessed a few things, and that is discussed in these interviews that I've done recently. So people are angry that I didn't speak up back then, and I want to kind of explain to you why that was. Number one, I was previously in this position with him, and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't really realize what had happened to me. Number two, I was a teenager. Number three, I was not only a teenager, but a teenager that was under the supervision of my abuser. He was mean to me, he was bullying me the whole time. I wanted so badly to be on tour that I was willing to put up with it, but it was really painful. I was sad, I was hurt, I felt alone. I didn't know what to do. It didn't register in my brain. It didn't even come across. It wasn't like I looked the other way on purpose. I didn't think of it as something that I needed to do. I'm not using this as an excuse by any means, but unfortunately back then it was very normalized in the scene for older men to be with much younger, essentially children, teenagers. I'm not saying that was right, because it wasn't, but because people didn't pay attention or care, that's kind of the mindset that a lot of us were in back then. So rewind back to when I was 15 years old, I got involved with a guy named Danny. And Danny wasn't, in his 30s. He was younger, he was like 19. And we dated very briefly. We broke up. It wasn't a big relationship. It wasn't a big love affair. I wasn't in love with him. I didn't want to marry him, but we dated. And he left me for a girl that was even younger than me, who was 14. And then a girl who was very big on the internet for a long time. Her mother reached out to me on a fake account and basically kind of told me all about who Danny was, how he has this national warrant for his arrest, that he is essentially a pedophile rapist and preys on little girls. And she presented proof. Every girl that he was dating, including me, was 12 to 15, really. I think that 16 might have been the oldest, and he wasn't so much older, so I didn't think of it as bad at the time. But the stories that I was hearing were horrible, and some of these girls were my friends. Some of these girls were friends of mine. I think there was at least 3 or 4 girls that I knew personally that he had been with and provided drugs to and did sexual acts with while they were under the influence, etc., etc. So this outraged me, and I felt taken advantage of. I felt, oh my God, this is horrible. And I felt like I wanted to help. So, long story short, knowing that he had a warrant, me and this girl's mother conspired with the police to set up a day to have him arrested. Mind you, it wasn't a setup. He was genuinely dating a 14-year-old girl, and he genuinely was going on dates with her out in public. This wasn't unheard of. But we just let the cops know where he'd be because he had a warrant. So my dad was there following behind to make sure there was no funny business. I was somewhere in the place. This happened at the Aventura Mall in Florida, in South Florida. And he gets arrested. The cops find a whole bunch of drugs in his backpack. I don't remember everything that was in there, but I know there was like cocaine and alcohol and ecstasy, and there was a lot of stuff in there. And he was with my best friend and this other girl he was dating who was 14 years old. I'm trying to leave out as many other names as possible because I don't want to upset them. I don't want to include them in something that they don't want to be a part of. But a lot of you may know about this story, so I don't need to tell you twice. So he gets arrested and he flees from the cops. He somehow gets out of their grips and jumps off of the, I guess, parking lot of the mall, trying to escape onto like a moving truck. He misses and he gets into a coma. I think it was a month or 2 months. I don't remember how long, but he ended up dying. He ended up dying, and before he died, I was a young kid, you know, and I was full of anger and angst, and I was so mad at him. I left him voicemails, some where I was yelling at him, some where I was crying. But I went onto his Stick'em account, and I left a comment that was in very poor taste. And that was published on a website called stickydrama.com. And at 15 years old, I was literally afraid for my life because I was being threatened on a regular basis for months and months and months to come from that day forward for doing so. People were threatening to kill me, jump me, do all sorts of terrible things to me. My address was posted. I'd go out to shows in Fort Lauderdale and people would throw things at me, call me a slut, a whore, all sorts of things. And on the day of his funeral, I was attacked. I was very badly attacked in Miami. I was with a friend of mine. We were in kind of a secluded area where you literally had to have followed us to get there. And I was beat up bad. This girl tore my weave out. I had like black eyes. I was swollen. It was terrifying. And I, to this day, believe that that was his sister who did it. It was the worst time of my life. I almost changed my name and moved, and it was terrible. I was a little girl, and all I was trying to do was get a bad man in jail. Unfortunately, he died, and obviously that's not what I wanted. But I was being called a murderer and this horrible person and a bitch and this and that, and it really affected me in the worst possible way. So there was a time that I tried to do the right thing, and it was the worst experience of my life. And this was shortly after I had met Dahvie. So from the time I was about at the end of me being 14 till a couple years later, I was essentially raped by several adult men that I didn't fully understand that it was assault, that it was rape, that it was wrong, because these are my friends. They wouldn't do anything bad to me. No. There were times I was at a party when I was 14, for example, and I asked for drugs. I was a party kid. I had problems. I was very depressed. You know, I wasn't the person I am today. I asked for drugs. I was given drugs. The last thing I remember from that night is going down the stairs with a person that I knew, that was my friend, who was 23 years old. I was 14 years old. I woke up in a bed next to this guy with no memory of anything. Two other guys in that same circle that I was friends with. Took advantage of me when I was staying at one of their houses, one after the other, and I didn't know what to do. I just kind of like let it happen because I was afraid to say no. There were a lot of things like that happened to me when I was younger. I wasn't promiscuous. I wasn't a slutty girl. I wasn't asking for it. I was just a teenage girl that wanted to be liked by cool people in the scene, older people. I was bullied by everybody around me from the time I was in elementary school until I moved out of Florida. So from the time I was like, it was what, 7, 8 years old, 9, I don't know, until I was essentially 18 years old, I was bullied. I tried to kill myself on several occasions. I have OD'd 7 times, I've tried to kill myself 7 times. I've OD'd 3 times, 2 of which were hospitalizations, and one of which wasn't even that long ago. It was a couple years ago when I still lived in Los Angeles, which is the reason why I live in North Carolina, because my family thought it was better for me and my mental health to get away for a while. And granted, it was the best thing that I ever did. I've never really, a lot of my close friends know about this stuff. A lot of boyfriends that I've had know about this stuff. But I've never really fully divulged and explained what my life was for so many years. The reason I'm telling you all of this right now is because I want you guys to understand something. Just because you hear a couple details about something in somebody's life doesn't mean that you know everything about them. Sorry. There are so many girls out there right now that are afraid to come forward. And I'm not only talking about Dahvie, I'm talking about in general. There are so many girls that are scared to talk about what happened to them, to go to the police, to go to therapists, to tell their husbands, their boyfriends, their parents what happened to them because of being judged, being shamed, being told you're a liar. And I'm making this video because I don't want any other girls to have to make this video. Telling these girls that you don't believe them, that they're lying, is wrong. We have nothing to gain by talking about what happened to us. We're not even talking about somebody that's relevant. If we wanted to gain something, don't you think we would have targeted somebody a little bit, famous maybe? I don't know. Even then, what were we going to gain? We're doing this to get the word out about somebody that is very dangerous. Maybe he's not out there killing everybody, but he's doing something that in many ways is just as damaging. There are girls who spent their entire lives living in fear and shame because of their experiences with this guy. I came forward because I felt like I wanted to help. And that is honestly the realest thing I can possibly say. I don't want this to keep happening to more girls. And I'm well aware that talking about and addressing Dahvie Vanity and what he has done to so many women, so many girls, I'm aware that talking about that isn't going to fix sexual abuse and rape, forever. I'm aware of that. But we need to stick together as human beings, as people. We need each other right now. So all I ask of you is to have empathy and understanding in this time. If you have nothing to say that is positive or uplifting, then don't say it at all. If you are a fan of this monster of a human being, then don't leave a comment. I obviously am going to tell you, this person is a terrible human being to idolize. And I hope that one day you will learn that, and I'm sure you will once he is in prison. But please stop shaming victims. Stop questioning motives. Stop telling people, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you see this? Stop questioning these things, because you're harming people. You're making it harder for more girls to step forward and be honest. You're making it harder for them to trust people. You're damaging more than you know with those sentences. I understand that you're outraged too when you say, oh, why did she call the cops? Why did she look the other way? I understand that that is a serious situation. But there are reasons behind everything. And, sometimes certain things can't be explained that easily. So I'm not going to continue talking about the rest of my life story, because unfortunately it's very dark. It's very, very dark. And there's not enough time in this video to discuss everything that's happened to me. Nor is it all relevant or any of your business, but I hope that by me talking about this, it helps something in some way, just a little bit. That being said, if you or anybody that you know suffers from depression, trauma, anything of that sort, I really hope that you can find help and you can heal. And I encourage you to contact a therapist, confide in a close friend, do whatever you can that makes you feel safe. If you or someone you know is in a situation of domestic abuse, has, experienced some kind of trauma like the one I'm discussing tonight, I encourage you to report that person. I'm not trying to force you to do it, but I'd encourage you to report that person so that you can prevent it from happening again. And if there is an issue where a cop doesn't believe you, or because I hear that a lot, keep at it. Keep at it. Don't be silenced because other people want you to be silenced.